I'm a very hard negotiator, Namrata. I don't give an inch because I've worked very hard for this brand. And when I go out and when I make negotiations with the West, I negotiate on behalf of India. That when you have been given the privilege and the honor of breaking glass ceilings, on your shoulders rides the hopes and ambitions of a lot of young designers and a lot of young people who will look at you, make an example out of you and say, oh, he's done it, we can do it better. And I never ever let anybody from the West shortchange that from me, because I think I'm doing this for my country because my country deserves it. We are not just building the brand for India, but we are building the brand for the world. And we have just started kind of exploring the idea of taking the business outside. But I'll tell you, Namrata, the idea or the dream is that by the time we reach 2030, it should ideally become a $2 billion brand. I was having a conversation where Aishwarya was supposed to be the face of the brand. And I was very clear that it had to be the Eiffel Tower and it had to be Aishwarya in a sari. And they're like, our ambassadors don't wear saris, they wear gowns because it's a very Western brand. I said, you are working with India's biggest designer. I want it to be equitable. I want the sari to represent India and the Eiffel Tower to represent Paris, and let it be an equal partnership between Paris and India, no less. I don't believe in biological families. I believe in logical families. And I think that I have the love of so many people within my organization and the love of the country at large. My cup runneth over. I'm genuinely a big fan of my jewelry. Namrata, I don't say that about my clothes and my accessories, but I think I'm a terrific jeweler because because of my father, I have a little bit of an engineering eye. And I think we do our jewelry beautifully inside out. There is no compromise on quality. And for whoever cares to listen, our prices are as competitive as Tanishq. People don't know that. People just think that because they come into this big store with chandeliers and they will be like, oh my God, his jewelry is very expensive. But we give them value for their buck. Within our verticals, the first vertical that will hit $1 billion mark will be jewelry.
Did you say $1 billion?
Yes.
B,
not M. M we have crossed a long time ago. I am going to rival Tanishq at some point of time. I'm going to rival Cartier. I'm going to make sure that I don't let other international brands survive in this country, because I'm going to put up a major nationalistic fight about being a luxury. I'm very ambitious about jewelry because I think I'm a good jeweler. Starting, let's say, from Malad to South Bombay, you have thousands of stores. Just imagine the amount of money that you have to spend on advertising to keep your stores relevant. I don't spend money on advertising my stores. I build stores as advertisement. But Namrata, India is larger than life. Which other country in the world has the opulence that India has? I'm an Indian. I have learned this from my own country, because you see elephants and you see peacocks and you see snakes and you see horses and you see palaces and you see the big Bollywood movies and you see Bansali and you see stadiums packed with thousands of people cheering cricketers.
That's true.
This is such an exuberant country. I mean, I don't understand why we even want to do minimalism in this country.
If you need to understand how a successful Indian company works, come to Sabyasachi. If you want to understand how to build a fine luxury business in India or out of India, come to Sabyasachi. If you want to understand how magnificent India's fashion industry is, how glorious and artistic its retail landscape can be, come to Sabyasachi. I have with me today the man himself. He has just flown in from New York, and we're sitting in his gobsmacking, gorgeous Mumbai store with Hermes as his neighbor. It's a neoclassical building, 4 stories tall and equally wide. And I'm just very excited to be here with him. Thank you for your time, Sabya.
Thank you, Namrata.
First of all, congratulations. This year is 25 years of Sabyasachi. You became a designer, and I've known you ever since. You became a designer with only 3 tailors and 3 sewing machines. And now you are unequivocally India's most successful fashion designer, just by going by turnovers alone. I keep telling everybody that you've almost become a fashion template. Whatever you do, everyone seems to want to follow and tries to follow. How are you feeling?
It's wonderful, and it's just such poetic justice that I'm getting interviewed on my 25th year by you, Namrata. For a lot of people who don't know, you have been a very big part of my evolution. It's also because when I did my first show, It catapulted me into success. And my second show, which was really not my best show, you ripped me apart. And you had said that this man has marketed himself as the next best thing after the sewing machine. And I'd never been criticized. And it was the first criticism. I remember cutting it out and putting it on my desk and saying, never again. And I think what you did was you told me that there are watchdogs around and one needs to behave themselves and work hard to become a success. So thank you.
You are silly. You have told me this story before, and I remember this collection very clearly. It was called Cora, and it was all
Correct.
white. And your collections have such beautiful names. I think I remember all of them. There was Frog Princess. That was one of your early lines too.
Nair sisters,
The
so
Nair
many of
sister.
them.
Yeah,
Yes.
yeah, I remember all of them. See,
No,
we
but
go back a long way.
it's a good thing because at that point of time, there really used to be fashion journalism because there were reporters who could cut you into size if you didn't deliver a good collection.
Excuse me, I'm still standing.
I know, but it was much more. For us, it was much more terrifying at that point of time because you see there was no D2C, so you had to only reach the consumer through the media, and I think that it was like being in school, and every time we had to do a collection, it was like a board examination. I'm
You
so
were
glad
being
that those
scolded. Is that what you
absolutely.
said? Well, you flatter us, but we're just gobsmacked by what you've created. You have mega plans for your 25th anniversary. You told me over the phone that you want to outdo Dior and have a mega show in Bombay. What else do you have planned?
I think I haven't really done a runway show in a very long time, and when social media happened to India, I was one of the first ones to jump in, and I think the canvas has become too small for the brand right now, and it's important for us to bring shows to the ground, closer to the consumer. And post COVID, a lot of things have changed. I think people are getting back into real spaces from digital spaces, and I want to be one of the first people to start capturing the big movement that's going to happen on ground. And the 25-year show is going to be a celebration of everything that we have done for all the people that we have done. So it's going to be friends, family, press, everybody who has been a part of the journey of the brand. We want to celebrate with them, and I want it to be a very India proud show. We're planning to get a lot of people, friends and family, people, supporters and press who have supported the brand from outside India for the last 25 years. So it almost becomes like an interface between the East and the West.
That's amazing. That's amazing. I want to ask you, traditionally, designers in India have come from Delhi when it first started, or big, bad, glamorous Mumbai. Calcutta is very small. Uh, it's very far, and it practically has no interest in fashion even today, thanks to the amazing textiles they have, the balucheries, of course, the jamdanis, tangals, and your chief minister wears these very humble danyakalis. What drew you to fashion? What made you want to be a designer, and what made you think you could just end up being India's biggest?
I didn't know that I would be India's biggest, but I just wanted to build a business with integrity. And let's talk about Calcutta. Why not Calcutta? Because if you look at Calcutta, it was the British capital. For the longest time, it was a city and a state that had the biggest thought leaders, whether they were in politics, whether they were in policy making, whether they were in literature, arts, filmmaking. You think of Satyajit Ray, you think of Tagore, and all of these people have contributed so much to creative to building India creatively. And when fashion came along, it's only right that some things should happen from that part of the city as well. Calcutta, the beautiful thing about Calcutta is that Calcutta is very insular when it comes to fashion. They have their own ecosystem. It's very far removed from how Delhi and Bombay thinks. It's almost like Antwerp. Like, remember when Dries and Anne de Minister and all of them started coming out of Antwerp? They had a very unique voice because of the way the city was structured, and their unique geography and their unique culture. Calcutta has a little bit of that, and if I see there are some very, very good designers. Anamika Khanna, Kalol Datta, Kiran Uttam Ghosh, Mona Pali, even Ritu Kumar started there. So I think that I'm happy that it's taken a while, but Calcutta is being recognized.
But 25 years ago, you knew you would be the biggest and the best. You told me then, and you had that single minded focus. And I didn't meet you first at your show. I actually met you where the stalls were, where you'll have racks. And I think I was the only one who was turning around your jackets. You had this beautiful P-shaped jacket, and you told me, and you were teaching things to us even then. You were very single-minded even then about what you were doing.
Namrata, sometimes what happens is that when you know. So I'll tell you a little story. When I was very young, I think I was in standard 3 or 4. I wrote a script. It was Snow White and the Seven Dwarfs, but I wrote it with costumes, lighting, set design, everything, and I showed it to my drama teacher. And she looked at me and she said, "Come to the teacher's room." I thought that I would get fired. And then suddenly all the teachers were looking down at me and said that, "Tell me that you have written this." I said, "Yes, I have." And the drama teacher from my school that year, uh, she she really liked me, so she bowed out. She said that, "I'm going to take a back seat. You're going to lead the school play and you're going to become the director." And I was directing kids who were from class 8, class 9, class 10, and I was just probably a 11-year-old or a 12-year-old boy. And they allowed me to work with dresswalas. They allowed me to choose makeup, hair, accessories, jewelry. I did my own set design. I did lighting design. I also did the background music for the play.
In class 3 or 4?
In class, it was, I think, class 4. And and uh, and when I did that, I knew that was the day I knew that you're okay. You know what? I'm going to do something that is going to be ground shifting in India in some sort of art. It could be performance art. It could be movies. It could be fashion. I wasn't very clear, but it told me that I was in the right path. And in many ways, I'm destiny's child, because a lot of what has happened to me, Namrata, has happened because there was somebody. I'm not a big believer in God, but I'm a big believer in the powers of the universe. And I think that somebody somewhere had already planned that these things are going to happen. And if you've read The Alchemist, I'm someone who looks at science in the universe, and all it takes. I'm a huge optimist. Even when I have my back against the wall, I need that little glimmer of hope to pick it up and turn it into something fantastic. And I work very, very hard. I think I think success comes to people who pick up clues from the universe, because a lot of people, it's always there for everybody. I think a lot of people don't pick up the signs at the right time. Whether consumer behavior is shifting because of a certain change in politics, or whether at some point of time, something is a certain movie is shaping the way people are going to dress, or whether it's a big musician, or whether it's a certain kind of consumption that's happening somewhere. I think the most successful fashion designers are people who catch the zeitgeist. Whether it's been Carl, whether it's been Chanel, whether it's been YSL. I think these are people. I think good fashion designers and successful fashion designers mirror the emergence of society before society even begins to emerge.
Yeah.
And I think that has always been my gift. I've been able to understand how people are going to shift and change much before the shift happened.
Yeah. I want to say that you've manifested this and prophesized this, but I think you're just being humble, and it would be very, very unfair, because I think you're not just a fashion designer. And I say this with full critical commentary. You are India's biggest luxury brand there is today, thanks to your multiple verticals that you now have accessories, you have fabulous jewelry. I'm a really big fan. And in multiple conversations that we've had over 25 years, you've always said that you want to be known as India's biggest luxury brand, as the biggest luxury brand out of India. This is not luck. This is a lot of hard work and focus,
Tenacity.
and it's amazing strategizing.
It's also tenacity, and I think it's integrity. I'll tell you something, Namrata. Do you know people don't need another product? They don't need to spend money to buy another product. I think a lot of people's consumption really depends on, they're looking for things that they want to either achieve or imbibe, and sometimes it's not even a product, it's a value system. We make it very, very tough for the consumer to shop with us. We never go on discount.
Yeah.
We don't customize. We have a very strict Sabyaism in the clothes, that we don't almost at the point of being repetitive. We make sure that we have a little Sabyaism in the codes of the clothes, and sometimes people have to probably discard a little bit of their identity to blend in and imbibe the brand. And the most important thing, in a country where a lot of luxury is bought with black money, we do not allow people to come and buy anything from the brand if they don't have financial credentials. And to build India's largest luxury brand with people's white money has been a challenge, but we have been very, very particular about the fact, because I think people buy from us because they admire the values of the brand. And when you build a luxury brand, you can have the greatest product, but if you don't have the greatest policies, and if you don't have policies that people respect, then you're just selling an expensive commodity. You're not selling luxury. One of the reasons why people buy from Hermes, one of the reasons why people buy from Chanel, Goyard, is because they have such strict rules about what you can buy, under what conditions you can buy, and they have a lot of financial discipline, manufacturing discipline. There will always be a little bit of uh, tussle between consumer demand and supply. And I think great luxury brands are built with integrity and respect. You can have the greatest product in the world, but if you don't build a business with integrity, that's when it starts crashing.
Sabya, but compliances are government dictated country to country.
Right.
What does financial discipline mean? Does this mean that you don't take cash?
It means that we don't take cash, in the sense that the government requires us to only take cash under 2 lakh rupees.
Yeah.
So everything that like our company pays 100% tax.
Of course.
We are very, very financially compliant, and what we do is we discipline people to say that if you want to buy Sabya, you have to buy Sabya with your hard-earned money that's taxed. And I think it puts, like I'll give you a simple example. When I started doing jewelry, there was a lot of conversation about the quality of my jewelry, because I think the entire jewelry industry clamped down upon me, because they realized that when this guy is, if he's done such revolutionary work with bridal, if he gets into jewelry, a lot of us will have to pack our bags and leave.
And they
So
did.
so and there was this very big nexus of jewelers who came to who told every single client of ours that don't buy jewelry from Sabya because his price is too high, his quality is very low. And I'm telling you something.
They also came to every single journalist.
I'm sure they did.
Yeah.
And I'll tell you, Namrata, people don't even know that our prices are actually at par with some of the largest mass brands in the country. When people look at a 1 crore necklace, they think, oh, his price is very expensive, but they don't ever investigate what you get for that 1 crore. What stays is the tagline, but people don't see value. One of the reasons why Sabya has always been very big and consumers have come back to us again and again and again is because, you see, India doesn't shop cheap. There's a misconception about the fact that people think that Indians buy cheap things. That's not true. Indians are very neat, or very, how do I say, they're very stubborn, intelligent shoppers. And I would say they have a lot of common sense. Indians shop for value.
That's
so
true.
when they might buy very expensive things if they see value in it. And I grew a very big business of consequence because I've always given value to my consumers, whether it's the stores that they have shopped in, whether it's the advertising, whether it's the collaborations, whether it's the international respect that I've got my consumers by making sure that we are shoulder to shoulder with other brands in the universe. And also the quality of our product. I think people come back, and we want to do the same thing with jewelry. And I say only one thing to people. I say that people can do indiscriminate shopping when they do it with untaxed money, but when people buy jewelry with taxed money, they will not buy jewelry if jewelry is not good quality. And
for sure.
And you just become more careful.
Yeah.
And I keep telling people that when you're buying jewelry from Sabya, the only thing that you get back with your jewelry, apart from design, is integrity, because we make sure that we deliver integrity, because we are taking white money. We are accountable.
Tell me about your atelier, your workshop. How many people are directly employed with Sabyasachi at your factory? Permanently employed, and I'm not saying how many you outsource, because we know India is largely a very organized but disorganized workspace, and that's really how we function. So how big is your atelier?
I think
how
we
many
have about
people do you have employed?
1,200 people.
1,200
people between blue collar, white collar. I might not get the figure right, but I'll still have to probably call up my HR and tell you. and it's growing because we are building more and more verticals. But we support a lot of artisans across India, and now we are actually ensnaring artisans from all over the world, because we don't pride ourselves as just an Indian craft brand. We pride ourselves as a craft brand. And I was talking to an international journalist, and I was saying that while people talk about appropriation, I think that craft from all over the world should be celebrated by everybody, because the more you celebrate craft, the more craft grows. So we work with companies in Mongolia for our cashmere. We work with companies in Peru for alpaca. We work with companies in Scotland for our tartans and our wool. We work with small batch companies in France for tweeds, and we work with small batch companies in Italy for wool and for silk. We work with companies in Geneva. We work with companies in Florence.
And
Uh,
these are all artisanal,
these are
handmade.
these are all artisanal companies which are doing the most important couture fabrication for some of the biggest brands in the world. They're very excited to partner with us. Being an Indian helps now,
Yeah.
because you're sitting in one of the most vibrant economies of the world.
Yes.
And I think and many of them are very particular about who they want to lend their names to. And some of my very big suppliers, actually, I remember there's this person in Prato. I wanted to go and get boiled wool with him, and he would not supply to me till I went to his farm. I had a meal with his family. I discussed art, and he flew down to India. He saw my store, and then he said, maybe, you're a designer of integrity, I will start working with you. These people all consider themselves to be artists. They're small batch suppliers, and they have built their businesses with the same integrity in which I've built my businesses. And I think that Sabyasachi today is celebrating not only India but the world, and we are creating a perfect harmony and a perfect synthesis between craftsmen from India and craftsmen from all over the world.
On your way to being a fully global brand.
I think it's important. I think when I think of Sabya today, I think it's a global brand with a very deep-rooted spirit of India. And I think, one of the bigger things that I feel is the fact that when you're an Indian brand, you need to understand that if you want to feel included by a global community of buyers, you also need to include global craftsmen into your brand. It cannot be a one-way conversation. I cannot say that, I want respect from global buyers, but I will not give respect to their artisans. So I think it becomes almost like a bipartisan conversation of craft communities coming from the East and the West, and together creating a global
But
brand.
the challenge is also, our craftsmen are labor, right?
Right.
We pay them like labor, we treat them like
Not
labor.
anymore. Not anymore,
I hope
Namrata.
so.
No, because you see, I'll tell you something, especially not with our company, because I'll tell you, I think what has happened in craft today, and which is something that we have been doing, and so many other people. When I look at Anamika, when I look at Rahul Mishra, the late Rohit Bal, I look at their work. What they have managed to do. Raw Mango. Then I look at Swati Sunena. I think what we have individually done is we have maintain craft at its highest level, and craft has trickled down. So maybe you will see exploitation at probably lower ends of the market, but at the upper end of the market, the communities are thriving. Children are not going and studying IT. I think the craftsman's biggest legacy is to be able to continue his craft with pride, and to make sure that he also gets enough financial reward and respect for it. And and if you want your craftsmen to succeed at global levels, you have to have a level playing field. And I think many organizations all over India are beginning to realize that. And I think that in the true spirit of democracy, the craftspeople will also begin to thrive. Gone are the days, and there's D2C. Like, if you don't pay a craftsperson enough, he has enough incentive to go and set up his own business and sell to portals. I think Swadesh is doing that. The Birlas are doing. There are so many more. You see Jaipur. You see so many more aggregators who will, at some point of time, I want to start a Sabyasachi universe of saris for the internet to help craft communities. I
That would be
think
amazing. That
no,
would really be
I
amazing.
think together we'll all survive, because you see, one thinks of India, and one has to understand that, while IT is great, and while medical services are great, it's India's soft powers that truly sets India aside, because of the fact that, your soft powers are built with centuries of culture. And when I go and speak abroad in different business schools, I only say one thing. I say that don't ever make the mistake of thinking of India as a third world country, because I think India is a first world civilization. And I think that there's a bigger cycle and a smaller cycle in the world, and in the bigger cycle, and in the really, really long term, luxury will return back to India, because that has been the origin of luxury. And the craftspeople in this country are going to become your neo IT people. They are going to push India's soft power, and India will truly become the global fashion capital of the world in the next 15 to 20
Again,
years.
like it was before the
100%.
British came and
100%.
took all our cotton farming, our skill set, and
100%. And I think, I think, like I said, that, there is always a short-term derailment, and there's always a long-term thing. And Namrata, my middle name is long-term. I don't have social media. I don't have Instagram. I don't have Facebook. I don't have Twitter.
you're the father of all of this.
No,
personally.
my brand does. I don't have it personally.
Yeah, right.
I sit at home, and one of the reason I do this, I self-discipline myself so that I don't have FOMO, because it's very easy to upset yourself or uproot yourself by looking at somebody else's success and create short-term strategy. The biggest job that I do right now is I train the people existing within Sabyasachi and the new people who are coming in to understand the merits of building a brand long term. And I always say to them that, it's a legacy that we are creating for the country. Maybe in our lifetime, we'll not be able to see the color of money, because, when Sabyasachi truly becomes a multi-billion-dollar global brand, I might not be around, but my job is to make sure that I sow the seeds.
What about e-commerce? I've always wanted to ask you why you have shied away from e-commerce. Your website has been a work in progress for so long, and it's now live and fantastic, but there are no prices on it, there's no shopping cart on it. It's really the opposite of how uh, fashion is consumed in India and the world over today. But there's something you're doing which is right. So tell me, what is the idea behind that?
I struggle to understand the digital medium. I do, Namrata. I'll tell you something. I remember a friend of mine teaching me how to withdraw money out of an ATM in London. And when the money came out, I started clapping in glee, because I could not believe that the money would come out of a stone box in a wall. And, it fills me with wonderment. The thing is that the kind of product that we are building, I find it very difficult to believe why somebody would actually buy it out of the internet, because there is so much tactile beauty to the product that, I don't want to, and the way we build our stores, I could have, there are many things that I could have done in my life. Namrata, I remember that, when my bridal business became very big, and if you see the shadow market, which is also what's happening to my accessories right now, it's almost 500 times the size of my own market. And an easy way to fix that and to make a lot of money would be to float a tender in the newspaper and say that, I want to pick up franchisees from all over the country. And the franchisees, it is almost like picking up money from the market. And and there would be, if I did a deal with all my copy market by saying that, why is selling a copy if I can manufacture the original and we reduce the price? But that's not the goal of what I wanted to do, because in my life, there was always a temptation to make quick money. But I think that money needs to be made correctly, and businesses need to be built correctly. I think in India, we are still beginning to understand e-com, because, e-com is being used for more easier services. You're using e-com for food, for regular products, for supplies, for travel. I think that luxury, when you're buying luxury in e-com, because of the fact that, as Indians, we are not jaded shoppers, but we are, how do I say, very intelligent shoppers. We are not going to spend a huge amount of money buying luxury goods that we haven't touched and felt. And also, we are building beautiful stores, because I think it's important for human beings to start becoming social again. And so let us first fulfill our footprints of real stores. Let people understand Sabyasachi through the real world, and there's always going to be space for e-commerce later. I'm not saying never, but at some point of time when we start doing more standardized products like beauty, sunglasses, maybe footwear, there will be a space for e-com. Right now we are not in the business of selling chocolates and tampons, so we will probably do it later.
But the math, can you imagine the size of your turnovers if you were doing even a little bit or small goods as on e-commerce?
I am saying we are not opposed to it. We are thinking about it, Namrata. But like I said to you, you see, the thing is that uh, if you look at, there's a very exciting thing that I want to tell you. I asked a few kids in my organization to tell me about uh, Marc Jacobs' contribution in fashion. Many of them hadn't heard his name.
Really?
Yeah. And that worries me. You see, because what happens with the newer generation, legacy is only 5 to 10 years old.
That's true.
Because you see, what happens is that you have so much information that you don't remember what happened 5 or 10 years ago. At our time, because we didn't have so much information, we knew what happened in the 20s and the 30s also. I think the kids today are struggling with the deluge of information, and when you expose your brand into the internet right now, my worry is that you can also get into very quick dilution. And I have been a little wary of being on the internet, because I have to work harder and harder and harder to prove to people that this is a brand of consequence. Because today is a day when you can't take things for granted anymore. I mean, most of the kids today wouldn't know that I had a collection called Frog Princess or Naya Sister, that I had.
Did you just call me old?
No, I'm just calling us a different generation. And what happens with them is that they would not know that I actually went to New York and showed at New York Fashion Week. I showed at Milan Fashion Week, and rightfully so. I think a lot of fashion brands rest on their laurels, because see, fashion is built with two things: the tangible and the intangible. We take our intangibles for granted, but you have to keep sowing the seeds of your intangibles every day for people to know who you really are, which is one of the reasons we spend so much money on creating content every day. And I think when everything goes onto the internet, somewhere down the line, there's a little bit of dilution of senses. We are a very sensory brand. We want people to engage with us in full glory, want them to understand the intricacies of the brand, and sales can happen a little later. I am not saying that we will not do e-com, but I'll take my time.
Yeah, and it's amazing that you are at the size you are without e-commerce for all this time. But I've heard a rumor, and you are free to deny it, but you are not free to say no comments. um, so the New York fashion grapevine tells me that just a few weeks ago, you outsold Chanel at Bergdorf Goodman, and that your one-day sale crossed $1 million.
Well, I'm going to refute the Chanel gossip, but I'll tell you we did $1 million.
You did?
Because yes, we did. And I think it took everybody by surprise, because, and it's not the first time we have done $1 million at Bergdorf. We did $1 million the first time we entered Bergdorf on a second day. So that was about 3 years ago.
Sabya, my jaw is not going back to my face.
No, and I remember that we went in and suddenly, Bergdorf has about 1 million sales associates, and suddenly everybody started coming and telling me, who exactly are you? How do you pronounce your name? Where have you come from? Because the word spread very quickly that we had done $1 million. And yes, I would like to say that the West is just beginning to discover Sabya, and I feel very good about it, because you see, I lead a very privileged life in India, because I'm a designer of consequence here. Everybody knows me. I don't have to move too many muscles to move a mountain. But when I go to the West, I'm at the bottom of the table. I'm getting flogged. I feel very young because I have to start all over again. But the only difference is that I'm equipped with a 25-year experience in strategy. So it's easier to climb up. And I'm enjoying the ride.
Let's talk about America alone. You had announced that you were opening a store in New York in 2019. It was when I had done an interview with you, and obviously the pandemic had happened, and it sort of delayed things by a couple of years. But why was opening shop in New York City such a big deal for you? You already were very early on in your career. You were selling out of Selfridges and Browns. I remember that, Albert Morris, um, and you were already very successful at Bergdorf. So why did you want to open your own store?
Namrata, while wholesale is great, it's still not your own voice. You're you are you have no control, because you're a part of a larger uh, environment where you have a small presence. There was a time when a venture capital fund was wooing me for me to sell a part of my company. It was very early in my life, and I remember one of the guys who was representing the fund was a Bengali guy. He comes and tells me, "Don't sell." And I said, whose side are you on? He said, "No, don't sell. I'll get a divorce. My wife has told me to tell you specifically that don't sell to us." And I said, "Really?" I said, "Why do you say that?" He said, "Sabya, I'll tell you something as a fellow Bengali." He said that, when we came to America as immigrants, all Indians fought with each other for supremacy. But today, if you look at where Indians are placed, they are in performance arts, they are in business development, they are in Wall Street, they are in medicine, they are in IT, they are in policy making, they are in the White House. He said today Indians are fighting for supremacy against the bigger community in the West. And he said that, we are very proud of the way you built the brand, and the representation of India in America is very poor. So if you build a store like how you have built it in New Delhi and Bombay, the entire Indian community all over America will come to celebrate you and push you forward. And I, like I said, I read Science from the Universe, and I thought it was very logical. And I came back home, and I remember at that point of time, the deal with Mr. Birla hadn't happened. I said to my father, "I'm going to America to look for real estate. I'm going to build a store." And it was that fateful I was already 20% of my business was coming from America at that point of time, and it was a very fateful meeting that told me that this is going to be the future, because I have done what I had to do in India, but now it's important for me to get the right representation, because representation in the right form really matters. So I wanted to show the West the art of retail.
This is an amazing story about the guy telling you don't let them invest in you. I know this venture capital company was widely reported, but have you shared the story with anyone else? Like how you changed your mind?
No, I had gone in clearly knowing that I won't sell.
Yeah.
I just wanted to know what the appetite was. But when what I came back was with that little bit of that extra information about the fact that this was the right time to enter America. And the American press has been more than kind, because the kind of editorials that we have got and the kind of press that we have got in America has been very good, because suddenly you have a brand from India that has been talked about the same breath as one would talk about Goyard or Chanel or Hermes. And 15 years ago, I would have thought that this would have been impossible.
I totally see what you're saying. And it's not just the press, it's also the sort of space that you have, the sort of store space that you enjoy. There have been Indian labels that have gone to Europe and the US before, but the clout that you sort of, I've seen firsthand, uh, pull is unprecedented. So how did you manage that?
By just being brave, because I think I you know I I I won't call myself a gambler, because I gamble with logic. I don't do illogical gambling, but I was like, how do you sell luxury without awing people and showing them your might? You know, um, and I was very clear that when I build a store in New York, I want to build the best store in New York, and it would be better than any store that exists in America. And I think there was this article that came out in Town and Country, which is one of probably the most respected lifestyle magazine in America, and they said that it was something like New York retail was floundering, and Sabyasachi came and saved it and showed them how retail should be done. And even today, when people from the press or important customers who are non-Indians who come into the store, they're quite astounded by the store, because I think they have such a stereotypical, myopic, almost like a, how do I say, uh, uh, it's such a strange idea of India that they have. I wanted the store to be able to change that, because I think that when people think of India, they either think of complete opulence, or they think of very popular culture that could be that sometimes almost sometimes borderlines on being superfluous, and uh, and and I think and many of them still think that we don't have airports. India is a country of camels and elephants. When they come into the store, they discover a new sophistication about India that they did not know before. And mine are heritage stores, but there's a lot of modernity in that heritage, because people look at the store, and I remember people coming and saying that, oh my God, I almost thought that this would be probably like a Ralph Lauren store. And I think they have started looking at the brand with respect because of the might of how we organize retail.
There was Manish Arora, a fabulous designer out of Delhi. He took Paris Fashion Week by storm. 10-15 years ago, he was sold at top European stores and became the creative head of this heritage European label, and then he went bust. He's now a cook in Paris. If you're in touch with him, um, how do you ensure that your risks, your leaps of faith, um, your investments didn't fail you?
You know, I say this with humility that I build a business ground up. Uh, Namrata, I've never shown in Paris. I don't even do fashion weeks anymore. But yet some of the best stores in the world are wooing me. So I'll tell you, when Saks Fifth Avenue opened in LA, uh, they had three big openings. The first opening was Chanel, the second opening was Sabyasachi, and the third opening was Thom Browne, in that order. And I remember telling them that I come from India. I'm a special brand. I needed to be given the importance that the brand deserves. And we were kept on their top floor, where the only two vendors in the top floor was Sabyasachi and Chanel. The rest of them were all in the
Really?
bottom floors. Yes, and it was 1 week before the Oscars, and it was they had renovated Saks, and it was their biggest event. And they were very clear. They came into my store and they said that we are looking for a brand that can wow LA, because people in LA are very jaded. And he said that we are, and it came out of the blue, because I remember suddenly Rupal Patel calling me and she's saying, Sabya, we have to pull this out because we are giving you the top billing. You're going to be selling at the same place as Chanel is, and we are going to give you the pre-Oscar billing 1 week before the Oscars. And we had to move mountains to make sure that we give you that space. And we did about close to $2 million with them. And suddenly again, everybody discovered Sabya all over again. I sometimes think that you don't really need to socialize, or you don't need to party, or don't need to do fashion weeks, or you don't need to court the press to be able to get good business. Because I think that when you build your business with integrity, and when you create good products, the world will come and find you. A lot of people do fashion weeks to get to big stores. We have done it without going into stores, and we have done it in our way. And I'm a very hard negotiator, Namrata. I don't give an inch, because I've worked very hard for this brand. And when I go out and when I make negotiations with the West, I negotiate on behalf of India, because I understand, and I'm saying this again with a lot of humility, that when you have been given the privilege and the honor of breaking glass ceilings, on your shoulders rides the hopes and ambitions of a lot of young designers, and a lot of young people who will look at you, make an example out of you, and say, oh, he's done it, we can do it better. And I never ever let anybody from the West shortchange that from me, because I think I'm doing this for my country, because my country deserves it.
You've said this to me time and again, that you don't own your brand, the country does. And your story certainly is an India story. It's not just an individual story. Whatever scale you reach, you've always had your legacy and a very patriotic idea in mind. So, are you restoring India to its rightful place in luxury? I mean, I even see it with Dior. You know, when they had their store, when they had their show in India, and they brought down, I don't know, 250, 300 international press, you know, to say thank you and to pretty much restore, um, uh, to understand that the idea of couture is actually the idea of craft. Is that story like a big story for you right now?
Uh, Namrata, my grandmother was a refugee. She came from Bangladesh. She had 5 children without ever getting married. And she was very headstrong. She was very progressive. And because she was a refugee and she had the angst of a refugee who came during the partition, she constantly told me the importance of self and the importance of dignity. And she constantly said that identity is the most important thing, and if it's ever taken away from you or your country, it becomes your job to be able to give a shot to restoring it back. And what the West has done, what I think what the British had done for us, and what the invasions did to India was, when people want to destabilize your country, they destabilize your culture. Because when they destabilize your culture, they destabilize your confidence, and when your confidence gets destabilized, it breaks down your economy. And if you see Sabya, if you see our stores, my stores are created like living museums. The products that we do are created as museums to tell every single Indian that do not forget where we come from and how great and big our country is. Because what I am trying to do is, though I understand that for culture to be relevant, it needs to be dynamic. I'm trying in my own way to bring back the will within Indians, and for them to recognize that they truly come from a country that has the most historic and the most magnificent culture. Because when you become culture confident, and sometimes nationalism is not such a bad thing, because it helps you uh, helps you stand up, because great things are always built from a point of confidence, never from a point of
Absolutely,
subjugation.
but I also think there's a great cultural nationalism sort of taking place. I don't know if you saw this podcast, Nikhil Kamat's podcast. He runs one of the founders of Zero Thou with Ranbir Kapoor, and he said he only wears Indian brands.
Right.
And he spoke about this one leather brand of shoes um, that he endorsed. And I think people with a lot of money, like him, and an ounce of good taste, are now buying only homegrown labels, and I love that.
Which is one of the reasons why we started accessories, because I think that becomes a true marker of how much people are willing to punt on you for prestige. Because you see, for a lot of Indians, uh, I think uh, being able to flaunt a Western brand was a social status at one point of time, but that is very quickly changing. I remember smiling when I saw Natasha Poonawalla carrying a Sabya clutch to Buckingham Palace and taking a picture with Prince Charles. And I said that, and it was that little, it was for me, it was that moment when I realized that we need to really grow the accessory business, because uh, we have a very beautiful logo. It's our national animal. It's the Bengal tiger, and my logo does not have SM, and oh my god, I just thought of it. It's such an incorrect uh, initial. It doesn't have CC, it doesn't have H. It has an animal, because it's almost emblematic and it's decorative. And the fact that accessory business is becoming the finest of its kind. And I understand the difficulties of building an accessory brand out of India, because our leather market is still not as developed as the West. So we bring.
We're the biggest leather exporters in the world.
I know, but sometimes when you look at very good fine tanneries, we still don't have good hardware in the country, though we are a jewelry first country. But I'm beginning to learn know-hows from Italy, and I'm slowly and slowly bringing them all back to Calcutta. So all the handbags that you see that are made in my atelier in Calcutta, but with the finest of craftsmen and intervention from Italy, from Paris, but everything proudly made in India. And we are very, very careful of, right now, while we are doing capability building. We are also improving our quality. Not many people know that our hardware, most of our hardware is not Zimac, but it's brass, and it's plated with 1 to 2 micron gold. And these are international standards of building an accessory brand, which is going to stand shoulder to shoulder with the best. And I personally think that my biggest achievement has not really been clothing or jewelry, because Indians love wearing Indian clothes. Indians love wearing Indian jewelry. But when Indians start buying Indian accessories from an Indian brand, you know that there is a surge in nationalism and winds are changing.
It really is a status symbol, your handbag, and you're the status, you know.
I don't know if I want to think of it that way. It makes me awkward, but I'm just happy that they're recognizing. I can see a very very strong sense of nationalism being built within Indians, because I think it took us a very long time to emerge out of the shadows of being colonized, and I think yeah, we are in a good space.
You gave us what we were looking for, only we didn't know it. Back to opening stores. Um, your stores are grander than palaces, with all the chandelier and the rugs and the textile and the antiques and all the art that you have. This Mumbai store is I mean, I could just it's grander than a museum. It's grander than a palace. It's um, your New York store is also quite sizable. Remember, I called you when I was there a few weeks ago, and it's standalone. And now you say you want to open stores, another flagship in New Delhi and another one in Calcutta. Are aren't they just major investments? Are they white elephants, or are they profitable and sustainable?
My stores are very profitable. Okay, I'll give you the example of the Bombay store. So the Bombay store currently has been shortlisted as one of the most beautiful stores in the world. The final announcement of who's going to win is going to come out in the next 2 weeks, and we are up there with Dior in Geneva and the Bouchara store in Ginza.
Which award is this?
This is the Prix Versailles Award, which is this is the only award that gives recognition to stores and emporiums all over the world.
Yeah.
And you see, Bombay is a very expensive city, and it's a very happening city between so many regions, like starting, let's say, from Malad to South Bombay. You have thousands of stores. Just imagine the amount of money that you have to spend on advertising to keep your stores relevant. I don't spend money on advertising my stores. I build stores as advertisement, because when you build something of consequence, today almost every single concierge of every hotel in Mumbai sends all the traffic to our store, where they say, go and see the most beautiful store in the world.
It's like a tourist site.
So, and Namrata, I think it's smart investment, because when you build something mediocre, you'll have to spend a lot of money in trying to make it relevant to people, and that money is just a waste, because it just sinks, because it's just money spent. But building a beautiful store is an investment, because of the fact that you don't have to spend too much money on advertising, and it stays with you for the rest of your life, and it grows the brand, it grows the community. It's just something, it's like a flowering tree. It keeps growing and growing and growing. So I think it took everybody, including my investors, a little bit of time to realize that, because I'm not really the easiest person to deal with when people don't really understand my vision. I remember Kumar Mangalam, even before the investment, he comes to my Bombay store and he looks at me and says, you have audacity. And my father still asks me, he said, I sometimes feel like you're a traitor because you're not my son. He said, I'm a humble mathematician, and I'm a chemical engineer. I don't know how you get this. How can you be so fearless? And I don't know, my father's father was Zamindar in Bangladesh, so probably the genetics got transferred. But I've always been excited about exuberance. Namrata, I grew up very poor, so if we had to go out on a date, it would have been a park. At that point of time, there were no malls, so we could not go to air-conditioned spaces. Right, the only air-conditioned space that we could ever afford was a cinema hall. I know how it feels to be excluded, and there was no public space of consequence that one could go to. But yet at the same time, when I used to go to North Calcutta, I used to look at these beautiful homes full of curios and antiques and everything. I was fascinated as someone who didn't have much, I was fascinated by the opulence of it all. And I think somewhere down the line, I think the joy of wonderment of seeing that opulence stayed within me, and I think that's how I built my stores.
Is there anybody who isn't let in?
Everybody gets let into the store, because I think that, when you build a store, it's for everyone. Like there are many people who come into the store just to have a whiskey cake and a roasty, and
Just to browse and just for the sensory delight.
many people come to browse.
Yeah.
Many people come to photograph the store. There are students that come to see the stores, and because when you're creating a public space, you can't compartmentalize people. People think that you can't enter a Sabya store without an appointment. That's absolutely not true, because I'm creating this for the country, and everybody's free to walk in.
And everything you do is larger than life. I know it's not just.
But Namrata, India is larger than life. Which other country in the world has the opulence that India has? I'm an Indian. I have learned this from my own country, because you see elephants, and you see peacocks, and you see snakes, and you see horses, and you see palaces, and you see the big Bollywood movies, and you see Bansali, and you see stadiums packed with thousands of people cheering cricketers.
That's true.
This is such an exuberant country. I mean, I don't understand why we even want to do minimalism in this country. I mean, in the sense that
people don't run their businesses larger than life. That's the difference. Your fashion shows, your sets, I remember you flying down your top clients when you have a big show, you host them in luxury hotels, your grazing tables. There is no comma. There is no.
But I'll tell you something. It's all very calculated, Namrata, because I'll tell you, if you look at India, you can win India with a lot of exuberance and love, because India is a very emotional country. We rise to it. If you in this country, if you create something exceptional, the whole country will cheer you on. And I think people forget that. When I advise a lot of corporates, and I keep telling them that learn to bring exuberance into what you do, because when you bring exuberance into what you do, you just capture the market. I one of the most amazing companies that I worked with is Asian Paints, and Amit Single and we have a great relationship. We built Nilaya together, and he's building something spectacular and of massive proportions that Indian retail has never seen. And that man is a visionary, and he says that, Sabya, your sense of exuberance is very infectious, and I'm learning from you, and I think I have pushed him over the brink to make Nilaya larger than life, and he's having astounding sales. And I think, look at our hotels. Like, you go to some of the biggest chain of hotels in the world, they feel like paupers compared to us. Even a small hotel chain in India is better than the biggest hotels in the world in India. And I think I love that about India. It's a very giving country.
But does your investor, Mr. Birla, ever say, Sabya, maybe it's a bit too much?
Mr. Birla, I'll tell you, he doesn't say much, but he thinks very deep, and he's a very long-term thinker. I like the fact that he's building his business very meticulously, very slowly, very deeply, and the man has a lot of wisdom. And the good thing is that he has an amazing amount of respect and trust for me. He would never say anything to me. He would never say no to me. If he only tells me something. If I'm going to do something, he will only ask me one question. Are you convinced? I said, yes, I am. He said, then no questions. I think it takes great trust to build great partnerships.
Yeah, your accessories, your handbag vertical is approximately 60 crores this year. Your jewelry is at 150, 175?
Between 150 to 175.
Okay. That's more than any accessories brand. It's more than any jewelry brand. Many very successful fashion companies make less money than your handbags alone. How do you explain this math?
We are going to be 500 crores this year, and I'm very ashamed. We're sitting in India.
Yeah.
It's one of the largest markets in the world. So I'm clearly, we are not doing enough, and we are not doing it correctly, because I think there's so much more that one can do. The only thing is that, Indians are very sensitive about price. And sometimes for a lot of people wanting to buy Sabya, the ability to pay becomes a barrier. Because you have to understand, we are the largest luxury brand in the country at full white. So, if people found it easier to pay, because a lot of people, I think, in the country still don't hesitate buying luxury with white money, I think the brand would have become a lot more bigger. But having said that, we are not just building the brand for India, but we are building the brand for the world. And we have just started kind of exploring the idea of taking the business outside. But I'll tell you, Namrata, the idea or the dream is that by the time we reach 2030, it should ideally become a $2 billion brand.
Whatever you have told me in 25 years, I'm going to do this, you have done. I'm going to touch this star, you have done. I'm going to do this to this planet, you have done. So I fully believe whatever number you will throw at me, I will say wow, and you're going to get
No, I am a conservative speaker, because I would, Parina was prompting me the other time that I think you might do 550. I said, Parina, let's say 500, because I'm sure that's what we'll do.
But I was very conservative when you launched your jewelry line because I mean, India is a massive jewelry supplier, also a big industry, and I really had my doubts because it's also very capital intensive, right? So it was a very big risk that you took. Of course, you came out tops, and we've already discussed how all the jewelers were complaining, but you were so determined, saying, "I'm going to be the Cartier of India," and here we are.
I think the jewelry is doing well in India, but I think it's doing incredibly well outside India.
Really?
We just even as we speak, we are getting prepared for a very big private showing at Prontomp in Doha. And the royal families are involved, and a lot of royal families from all over the world are buying Sabyasachi jewelry. The jewelry is starting to get a lot of traction in Hollywood. A lot of big movie stars are beginning to wear the jewelry, and again, the jewelry is very exuberant. It's not for the faint-hearted, and I think that uh, there is a time and a place for exuberance, and I think we have globally suffered for a very long time post-COVID, and I think right now everybody either wants to move towards experience or shop for things which are widely exuberant. I think there is no middle path anymore, and I'm happy that or you buy something that's very quite luxury. The middle path has moved away completely. And because we are not people who do quite luxury very well, I probably don't even know how to do it very well. But we are people who do exuberant very beautifully. I am just kind of turning up the volume on exuberance.
But you told me once that you had made more money in 1 year of jewelry than in a decade of fashion.
Correct.
So you really hit it out of the park with it.
Right.
And I'm really intrigued to know, what is a bigger business for you today? Is it jewelry or is it your bridal wear still? Is it clothing versus jewelry, or is it bridal
No,
wear?
I think jewelry will become probably our largest business in years to come, much bigger than clothing, much bigger than
How
clothing.
many years do you anticipate?
And I am going to rival Tanishq at some point of time. I'm going to rival Cartier. I'm going to make sure that I don't let other international brands survive in this country, because I'm going to put up a major nationalistic fight about being a luxury. I'm very ambitious about jewelry because I think I'm a good jeweler. I understand jewelry. I think
I'm genuinely a big fan.
No, I'm genuinely a big fan of my jewelry. Namrata, I don't say that about my clothes and my accessories, but I think I'm a terrific jeweler, because you see, I have a little bit of because of my father, I have a little bit of an engineering eye, and I think we do our jewelry beautifully inside out. There is no compromise on quality, and for whoever cares to listen, our prices are as competitive as Tanishq. People don't know that. People just think that because they come into this big store with chandeliers, and they will be like, oh my god, his jewelry is very expensive. But we give them value for their buck, and it's just the beginning. And I think within our verticals, the first vertical that will hit $1 billion mark will be jewelry.
Did you say $1 billion?
Yes.
B.
Not M. M we have crossed a long time ago. M we have done in one day, by the way.
Yeah.
So that's of no consequence.
We spoke about Asian paints. So apparently they pay you 40 crores a year.
I'm not blinking.
You're not blinking and you're nodding. This is an absurd amount for a fashion designer, don't you think?
You know, why would you give that money to a movie star? Because they just endorse you. They don't build anything for you.
They don't create anything.
They don't create anything. We are creating the product for the consumer to buy. And I think I've built a damn good business with Asian Paints. It's giving them a lot of recognition, and I think the Asian Paints Sabyasachi partnership in a collaboration is a true spirit of an equitable partnership that should have always happened. People fight for equal pay between genders. I'm beginning to kind of raise the bar for fellow designers that when you do collaboration, this is the kind of money that you should be seeking, because it's not exploitative, and it's almost like earning the right kind of money for the right value that you're creating. I think it's very just.
I also think it's amazing confidence. You decide your worth, right?
I do.
Yeah. And you've had multiple and some
And
really
I never oversell myself, because when you oversell yourself, you'll never be sustainable, because at the end of the day, any collaboration that you do cannot be how do I say, cannot be one way. It has to be equitable for both parties.
yeah, and people are
The
not
reason,
foolish.
correct, the reason why these survive, and it's not that they pay me this once a year, the reason this survives is because they get a lot of value out of it also.
Yeah, of course. You've also had major collaborations with other very big super brands like Estee Lauder, like Pottery Barn, H&M in 2021. And
Starbucks, Louis Vuitton.
yes, Louboutin much earlier on. And I understand the idea of collaborating, so it sort of puts your brand in that league. It's a great, marketing idea or positioning idea. How much money does that make you?
Good question. It's not always about money. Sometimes I put in the money of the collaboration within the project to maximize the project by saying that, okay, spend this kind of money in advertising.
Give me an example.
Because sometimes I would tell a collaborator the fee that you would give me, I would not take the fee to be able to maximize a project by probably doing bigger advertising around it. Because you see, when I do collaborations, I'm not doing it for the brand, I'm doing it for the country. Every collaboration that we do, I make sure that it's about India. I remember when I was doing my collaboration with L'Oreal, I was having a conversation where Aishwarya was supposed to be the face of the brand. And I was very clear that it had to be the Eiffel Tower and it had to be Aishwarya in a sari. And they're like, our ambassadors don't wear saris, they wear gowns, because it's a very Western brand. I said, you are working with India's biggest designer. I want it to be equitable. I want the sari to represent India and the Eiffel Tower to represent Paris, and let it be an equal partnership between Paris and India, no less. Even when I was doing the H&M collaboration, I had many conditions. One of the conditions that I had with them was the fact that 50% of the merchandise needed to be manufactured within India, because I wanted to create jobs within the country. They agreed. I said the collection has to be about India. And thirdly, one that became a deal breaker almost was the sari. And they said, listen, we are not an ethnic brand. I said, it doesn't matter, but at least for India, you have to do a sari.
You said that at the time of the launch too,
right,
that H&M did its first ever sari.
First ever sari, and they've never done it before. Even when I was doing the collaboration with Estee Lauder, the template was much easier because it was celebrating India and Indian colors. And whether it was working with antique brocades with Louboutin, whether it was doing chins and kalamkaris for Pottery Barn, I have a very simple thumb rule. I will only do an international collaboration if it tells the India story to the West. And many of the collaborations, I don't do it for personal profit or money. I put in the money back towards advertising so that people have a better idea about how modern the country is.
Is ABFRL part of these collaborations?
They were not, because most of the collaborations that actually happened before before takeover. Estee Lauder happened after, but the Estee Lauder communication happened much before. But yes, ABFRL is a part of the collaboration.
Okay,
yes.
so they have an equal stake in
no,
they
what Estee Lauder ABFRL does is they let me run my own ship. So I decide what collaborations I want to do, what kind of money we want to get, and what is the strategy of the collaboration. Sometimes it is about reaching a new market. Sometimes it is about catering to a new demographic. Sometimes it's just creating pride for the brand, for the consumer. Because, I know that a girl having a Sabyasachi Starbucks coffee in a Starbucks mug will one day say, Papa, I want this designer for my wedding. So you have different ways of seeding the idea of the brand to different consumers. Some of them might not even be consumers today, or they might not even know you, but they find you through things. The only thing that we do is, when we do collaborations, we are very clear that we'll only do collaborations with iconic brands.
How has your brand evolved after ABFRL has invested in it? They own 51% of Sabyasachi now. What do they bring to the table other than a lot of money?
I think comfort. Namrata, I was struggling with the fact that I've built something this large, and tomorrow, it's very strange. I remember post-COVID, I was in the New Delhi airport and I was picking up my luggage, and there's a girl who comes to me running, and she says, and I have no idea who she was. She just comes to me and she said, "I worry about you." And I said, "Excuse me?" And she said, "I worry about you. I just worry that you don't die." And I said, "Why would you say that to me?" And she said, "No, I worry about it." I said, "What will happen to us if you die?" I said, "Are you from the industry?" She said, "No, you give us a lot of hope." And then I started thinking that, yes, I've built something of consequence, but I've never really started thinking about the journey after. Because you see, for a brand as complex as Sabyasachi, it would take me 10, 15 years to transition the brand to somebody else, because my body will give up, my mind will fail, and somebody has to carry the story forward. I think what I feel with ABFRL is an immense sense of security that if something happens to me tomorrow, there'll be enough people who will carry the story forward. I'll tell you a small story. I don't really weep in public. I only wept once. And I remember sitting in Barcelona and crying like a baby when I saw Gaudi's Sagrada Familia. He's long gone, and I could see all cranes and everything trying to build Sagrada Familia exactly to his sketches. And I think that is the power of uh, human endeavor. That is the power of an artist's spirit. That long after you've gone, everybody is kind of pulling their resources together to make sure that your dream is fulfilled. And that is what, and it's not just me. I don't say I at Sabyasachi anymore, because it's a lot of us. There are many people in my organization who work for 15, 20 years. They're the wind beneath my wings. And I keep telling all of them that, it's almost like, when we look back, we can all say, hey, we've created something of consequences like Tata Steel. And I think that's the reason why we work this hard, because we know that what we are going to build, the might of it, we'll never get to see in our lifetime. But if we build it the right way, help will come from all quarters. The people of the country will build the brand for us.
Tell me about the moving parts between you and the Aditya Birla Group.
So what they do is they're creating the back end for me. So giving us more structure by getting a CFO, by putting structure in place, by getting HR system. I did a lot that I could do for my let's talk about HR, for instance. I did a lot that I could do for my workers during COVID. I made sure that not a single one of them lost their jobs. But today what they do is they do blood donation camps, they do eye camps. Recently, I think one of my tailors passed away because he was unwell, and his family got about a 20 lakh life insurance policy and everything. That's the beautiful thing about working with a corporate. You sometimes think it's a dirty work, but what they do for people that really matter.
A good corporate.
Yeah, a good corporate. They do immense things. I think what they are doing, I think I consider the Aditya Birla Group to be nation builders. They come from a great legacy, and their people policies are so amazing that when I look at the fine work that HR is doing, that today everybody has health insurance, not just health insurance for themselves, but for their spouses and their immediate families, and and sometimes for their cousins and their children's also. To be able to tell a 27, 28-year-old kid that let's build an insurance for your family so that if anything happens, you'll be able to provide for their medical thing. It's people are getting housing loans. I think I did things in a little bit of a haphazard, unprofessional way, as a family run business would do. Getting a corporate, what they do is they give structure, and I think what they have managed to do is they've managed to build better lives for people that really matter. And I think I'm very grateful for that. It makes me feel very good.
Of course, I don't doubt that. But how does the financial planning work? Like, who decides how Sabyasachi spends his money?
I decide everything.
The company too.
I decide everything within the company. The only thing that I don't decide is tax planning, because something that's what my father did before ABFRL came in, because I'm not very good at it. But everything about how to, I give a lot of freedom to people, but I sit on every meeting. Whether it's building factories, whether it's finance, whether it's HR, whether it's marketing, whether it's product development, whether it's infrastructure building, I sit on every meeting to make sure that that because what I'm trying to do is I'm trying to build a culture between the old and the new, that things don't slip. I think post transition, I'm working harder than I've ever worked in my life. It helps me eat a little extra pizza because I think I burn it out by working hard. But yeah, it's been very good. I'm learning so much about business development that I didn't do. Like I did things with a lot of instinct. Now I do things with a lot of rigor. It's good to be disciplined.
What is Sabyasachi's messaging to the world?
I'm going to use a quote from Dirty Dancing, where they famously said that nobody puts baby in a corner.
Oh, yay.
And I said, nobody puts India in a corner.
What an amazing line. It's really an amazing line. It's not always been hunky-dory for you. You have been controversy's child. I mean, being around for 25 years is a big deal in Indian fashion, which is 25 years old if you count the number of years we've had fashion weeks. And whatever you do invites some sort of comment or criticism which isn't flattering from someone or the other, like H&M when the collaboration happened. And my thoughts about all these NGOs who sort of went public saying that you had done a great disservice to the Sanganeri prints, to the Sanganeri block prints. How do you navigate criticism? I mean, it's one thing, one journalist saying something and you pinning it and introspecting, but this was a big deal.
No, Namrata, I'm my biggest critic. I have a very strong, I'm very hard on myself. I'm probably harder on myself than any critic will be harder. I'm really, really tough on myself. And if I tell myself that I'm okay, I don't care what people say about me. I've also learned over the years to be a little thick-skinned, because I think that when you become a public figure or when you become a person of consequence, you just have to accept it with grace and gratitude that people will have an opinion about everything that you do. Some of the opinion might matter, some of it might not matter, but you cannot be a crybaby and say, oh, this has been written about me and that has been, it's just a part of the territory. Secondly, a lot of things that get written on the internet, you have to take it with a pinch of salt, because I think a lot of people are just venting their personal anxiety onto it. And I am a person who takes a lot of feedback. So I tell my team to give me feedback from stores, from Instagram, from comments from people, because I think it's very important for you to grow as a brand by taking feedback from people. And there will always be some feedback of consequence. There will be some feedback that you can just ignore. But I'm perfectly okay with people hanging me on a cross, because if you get that much love, a little bit of flogging is okay. It's absolutely fine.
I love how also you're very okay with your copycats. You are the most copied designer in India, and I don't think anybody else, also because your branding is so um, obvious and significant, especially the Bengal tiger. But anyone in their right minds in this country, um, despite our useless courts, would run to the press or run to courts, when there was plagiarism or blatant copying, as you have seen. But you call copycats silent marketing.
100%. So I'll tell you, Namrata, when I first started making a little bit of money and I wanted to go abroad, I used to go to the Bangkok night market. One of the big takeaways from the Bangkok night market was buying fake Calvin Klein underwear.
Yeah.
Because it had the big waistband.
Yeah.
And we all wanted to wear it.
And it would show.
And it would show, and it was too expensive to buy the real ones. So I bought the copies, but eventually I ended up buying the real ones. And I think that the copy market is just a portal for people to get to your brand when the economics change. And I I think that silently, diligently, religiously, they are wittingly or unwittingly making you the champion that you become. And I can only fold my hands in reverence and thank them for it.
Does this apply to your jewelry too? This whole country is
It
copying.
it is,
Like
but
family-owned jewelers are now, the big family brands are now copying your colored stones, your vintage-inspired things.
I'll tell you something, Namrata. It is flattery, and I truly believe that everybody, you see, uh, the human will or the human endeavor is to upgrade. We always want to upgrade, uh, whether it's knowledge, whether it's a house, whether it's a relationship. We want to just become better versions of ourselves. Consumption also follows the same cycle. So I think that people are at some point of time going to aspire to buy the real thing. And we haven't communicated enough about jewelry. One of the reason why people buy my copies, it's not just because of accessibility, because people imagine that we are very expensive without knowing the real prices. But when they come and discover the prices, they're like, oh my god, why did I even buy a copy in the first place? And it has even happened that they bought copies which were more expensive than the original.
Really?
And so I think I think it's a fear psychosis, because walking into a Sabya store for a lot of people can be quite intimidating. And I think many people buy copies not just because of anything else, but because of the fear of intimidation.
May I ask you about your personal life?
Yes.
You were very quiet about it, as of course you have every right to be. But creating all this value, building all this legacy, having a name that's now well pronounced the world over, and being the big cultural template that you are, didn't you ever want to have children, for example, to sort of leave them your empire?
No, I'll tell you the reason why.
And
I
it's
have
totally
so
okay to have children. I mean, as we've seen with so many people that we know who have children without having a spouse.
No, but I didn't never wanted to have, because see, Namrata, I started working when I was 14. I became a parent to my parent when I was 20. I was looking after my family. I was looking after my sister. And then eventually a master came along, a finishing girl came along. Now a CFO comes along, a CHRO comes along. And in many ways, that and I run away during my birthdays because we have so many people, and I keep telling them that if you all wish me on my birthday, I'll get you all fired. And then eventually every department will dress up in saris and kurtas, and they'll buy their own cakes and they'll eat it themselves, and they'll light a candle and they'll send a video and say happy birthday dada, and they'll send me a picture. That's a real family. I don't believe in biological families. I believe in logical families. And I think that I have the love of so many people within my organization and the love of the country at large. My cup runneth over. I have never felt the need to have children to pass on. I'm not a very territorial creature. I don't own homes. I live in a rented apartment. I i live in hotels all my life. I have never really believed in I don't believe in ownership. And I also think that even if I had children, I would probably pass on the company to somebody who was able, rather than giving it to my child because the child is my blood. I just don't have that in me. For me, I think people who you surround yourself with and people who you choose to live with are your real family, not people that you give birth to.
There's a great leadership lesson in that. I feel India has been a very, very sophisticated luxury market for so long. Do you ever think it will be a sophisticated high street market? I mean, our malls are very young, 10, 15 years old. Do you think a high street will ever take off?
100%. Namrata, it really is a combination of politics and economy. And I think, the way the world looked at India, and the way the world looked at Indians, and the way Indians look at Indians has completely changed. And I think we're never going back that path again. I think that there's a newfound self-belief, and the kids who are being born today have not seen the British rule. They've only heard of the partition. Probably many of them will only read it in the history books. And I think they don't feel tormented by a past. They don't carry the baggage that their forefathers carried. I think these are children who feel very equitable in the world, and they feel lesser than no other. I think when a country is vibrant with a young population of people who don't feel less.
And we have access, right?
And
The
you have
world is
access.
flatter.
And look at the way, I'll also tell you one more thing. Today, if you look at consumption patterns are becoming very discerning. There's a lot of things that China can do that India can't do yet. But there's a lot of things that India can do that China can never do. Because, a lot of things made in India, made with culture and craft.
Give me one example.
Let's say Patan Patola saris, for instance, right? Let's talk about so many things. Why just the Patan Patola? Like let's think of our music, let's think of our weaving, let's think of our embroidery. It gets passed by generation to generation to generation. The world will get polarized between a very digital world and a very physical world. And in the very physical world, we will crave for authentic human experiences, and then India will deliver like no other world or no other part of the world can. And I think it's a glorious time for India. And like I said, that the world is round and history repeats itself, and India is going to find its glory all over again. And why high street? India is going to shine in every single field that you can imagine.
But speaking about countries and economies, how does it affect the way we look at sustainability?
So you see, human craft is anyway sustainable in nature because
it supports livelihoods.
Correct. And it's not just if it's not just culturally sustainable, it's also ecologically sustainable because of the fact that a lot of things are done by hand, and they don't use a lot of artificial energy. And also you have to understand, anything that's created with craft is slow in production cycles. So you will always, the time that it takes to create will ensure that sustainability is a part of the process. Craft is not going to go into landfills.
There's a big movement in the West where luxury prices have sort of gotten crazy high, and there's a very big and discerning set of customers that says we don't want it anymore. Do you think India will ever come to that part where Indian luxury consumers say that it's just too expensive and it's not worth it?
The Indian customer has said it all their life, because I think the beautiful thing about being Indian is your value systems are so strong that you will never shop for any product that falls off the value grid. So it keeps the Indian Indian manufacturers and the Indian like the Indian designers disciplined, because that unlike the West, where they can dangle the intangible carrot in front of you and say, okay, fine, that's why my price is 20x time the price of my cost of goods. That's never going to work for the Indian consumer.
Is this why international luxury labels are not seeing the numbers out of India that they see in China, for
100%. We are a very smart country. We don't get swayed. They might just show you the door and say, okay, fine, you might be great in your country, you're of no consequence to me. And I love that about India. The consumer keeps the brand disciplined. I think it's such a, and the Indian consumer will always find an alternative. We are a jugaad country. They'll say, fine, you know what? If I have to spend so much,
I'll create my
money,
own.
I'll create my own. I don't need yours.
I'll create my own Sabyasachi.
Yes. And like what's happening, why do you think we have such a big shadow market? Because they'll be like, they will always find a gap. I find that very amusing and very charming.
Yeah. And it's also a reversal of whatever like consultancies will sort of explain to you what they do,
Correct.
that this is a developing country or this is a developed country.
Consultants only talk bullshit. Because I think their job is to just tell a corporate what a corporate wants to listen, but the reality is something else.
Yeah, I think so too. There's another big trend in the West where this quiet luxury is sort of making a lot of money. Like the Row, for example. I don't know if you know of that label. They're also
yes, of course.
$1,000 for black t-shirts, black vests. What do you make of that trend?
Well, that trend will work abroad. It won't work in India, because you see what happens. In many ways, they ask for that kind of money because that's status buying. In India, people will say, we'll go to Zara. And I think the way the West shops and the way India shops is very different. India does value shopping and investment shopping. The West just believes in doing status shopping. And I think in India, culture still is currency,
Yeah,
and
for sure.
I think currency for status. And I sometimes it can be very frustrating to grow a luxury brand in such a market. But having said that, I really admire the country for having so much of horse sense.
Yeah. I have a very important question. Um, whatever we have discussed in the last 25 years that we've known each other, you have achieved. What is the next 25 years? What mountain are you going to scale then?
The first 25 years was building the brand within India. The next 25 years will be building the brand outside the country, because I think that I think I did what I had to do within the country, and now it'll have its own organic growth. But I think I will use the learnings of my last 25 years, because you see, the good thing, Namrata, is that I grew up without the internet.
We all did.
Yeah, we all did, and we had a lot of time to think. And I think while there are a lot of smart people in the world also needs a little bit of old world wisdom. And I will probably be able to use this hard earned wisdom that I got by being middle class and working my way to the top, to use my expertise to probably change the narrative of the way the West looks at India.
That's amazing. And I'm quite sure, I can't even hope, I'm quite sure that your next 25 years are going to be as glorious as the last have been. I just want to say thank you for all the time that you've given us today. You've come to Bombay especially to see me, and I'm happy to buy you lunch.
Thank you. Like I said, Namrata, you had such a strong influence in shaping my journey. You were the first journalist who really flogged me when I deserved to be flogged. So thank you.
I've also paid you a lot of compliments and made up for that.
No, I don't say that in a bad way, because I like the fact, I think compliments are something that you forget, but flogging is something that you remember. I carry
I
it with me.
remember 1 year you didn't talk to me or
That's
respond
not
to my
true.
messages
That's not true.
after that article.
I was probably very embarrassed.
Well, thank you so much
Thank
for your
you.
time.
Thank you.